So this is another dojo storm, which again, this is a modern term that I think jiu-jitsu people created. I don't know. Did you ever use the term
I've never heard that before.
You've never heard dojo storm before?
No.
Oh, dojo storm is when you take your jiu-jitsu guys and you go to another. And this happened. Again in San Diego, where we live is it's gone through the phase already of all the schools being all battling against each other, and really the battle. There's multiple reasons. One of them is because back in the day, before YouTube, you could actually have moves that you could keep contained in your school. Mm-hmm. And you could say, hey, look, don't show anyone this because we're going to use this in the next tournament and we want to...
Which is exactly what happened in Japan, too, by the way.
So
with these schools.
With these schools. So you'd have secret moves. Well, now, honestly, with YouTube, and every competition is on YouTube, and you can watch anybody from any school, and you can see what moves they're doing, and there's all this online. So basically, there's no more secret school knowledge anymore. Yeah. The other thing is economically, at one time, it was... Don't leave my school because you're my student. You're giving me $150 a month. And so don't go to another school. And what that did, initially it worked. You could keep your students, but people realized that if you want to get good, you have to get out and train with other people sometimes. And so if you weren't going to let me go and train at other schools sometimes, I'm not going to train at your school. And so they would actually end up losing students by trying to keep the students. So I think that's what kind of leveled San Diego out and other areas that are high concentration jiu-jitsu, because... Yeah, it's because now it's, people will come and go and train at different schools and everyone's cool and it's just a much more mellow atmosphere.
Yeah, well, I remember in 2000 when I first moved to the Bay Area and was training in jiu-jitsu, and I walked into the school to take my first class, and they had, it wasn't very well written from a legal standpoint, but they had an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that they had people sign so that they would not teach the inner workings and techniques of said school.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
It used to be a lot tighter, and I think YouTube pretty much is the thing that destroyed that.
Yeah.
But back in the day, the dojo storms would take place, which was we would go from one school and go to another school. That was, let's say a school was saying, oh, we'll beat these guys, or we have better jiu-jitsu. Oh, really? You got better jiu-jitsu? Cool. Hello, how you doing? We're here to see whose jiu-jitsu is better. And it's a dojo storm, and show up and you know, everything is determined on the mat. That's a beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu. So this is old school dojo storming, and this is against Hozoin.
Hozoin, I'd have to see.
Yeah.
How's it spelled?
Hozoin.
Yeah, Hozoin.
That's right. Here we go for a dojo storm. And he's showing up there kind of looking for where the school is. He's kind of like a little bit lost looking around for where the actual school is. And there's a priest that he's working with. When he reappeared, the priest handed him a registry and ink box saying, write down your name and where you studied and what style you use. He spoke as though instructing a child. The title on the registry was List of Persons Visiting This Temple to Study, Steward of the Hoizoin. Musashi opened the book and glanced over the names, each listed under the date on which the samurai or student had called. Following the style of the last entry, he wrote down the required information, omitting the name of his teacher. The priest, of course, was especially interested in that. Musashi's answer was essentially the one he'd given at the Yoshiko school. He had practiced the use of the truncheon under his father, without working very hard at it. Since making up in his mind to study in earnest, he had taken as his teacher everything in the universe, as well as the examples set by his predecessors throughout the country. He ended up by saying, I'm still in the process of learning. You probably know this already, but since the time of our first master, the Hozoin has been celebrated everywhere for its lance techniques. The fighting that goes on here is rough, and there are no exceptions. Before you go on, perhaps you better read what's written at the beginning of the registry. Musashi picked up the book, opened it, and read the stipulation, which he had skipped over before. It said, having come here for the purpose of study, I absolve the temple of all responsibility in the event that I suffer bodily injury or I'm killed. I agree to that, said Musashi with a slight grin. It amounted to no more than common sense for anyone committed to becoming a warrior. All right. This way. So that's the introduction. And that's actually cool too. That's an old school jiu-jitsu thing. When you come in for the other thing that would happen is challenge matches. And I don't know if you've seen videos from the old school Gracie Academy at the challenge matches.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But those guys would come in and sign a waiver like, hey, if you die, we're not liable.
This is the old like gray market, black market, copy over copy VHS of Gracie in action.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, we had my old teacher Fabio Santos, and he had videos of himself doing Gracie challenge matches at the Gracie School up in Torrance, and he would play them for us. And it's the same thing. Yep, sign your waiver, and then you're going to get your arm broken, by the way.
First, I break your leg. Then I put you in my guard.
So at this point, he goes into this school, and there's some badass. He's not the head of the school, but he's like their best guy, and he's up there kicking everyone's ass. He's saying, next, and he roughs a guy up and kicks his ass. Then next, roughs that guy up. Next. And finally, no one else wants to fight him. And here we go. This guy's name is Agon, A-G-O-N.
Agon. Yeah, it's
Agon.
It's an unusual one.
He's the guy that's been roughing everyone up. Is there no one else, bellowed Agon, now holding his practice lance horizontally? The brawny steward was comparing his registry with the faces of the waiting men. He pointed at one. No, not today. I'll come again some other time. How about you? No, I don't feel quite up to it today. One by one, they backed out until Musashi saw the finger pointing at him. How about you? If you please. If you please? What's that supposed to mean? It means I'd like to fight. Yeah, and so he's gonna go, and I'm gonna pull a couple highlights out of this thing, but this guy, if you please. So this guy Agon, he immediately does like a practice run at some board that he puts his lance right through, and it's sort of like an intimidation tactic, right? You want to train? Cool, watch this. Ah! And he screams, and he puts his lance right through this thing, and actually there's the old guy that had brought in Musashi's looking at him and saying, hey, don't be a fool, you look stupid, that's not a board you're about to take on. Meaning, like, you just killed the board, the piece of wood, but this guy is not just a board.
Bricks don't hit back.
Yeah,
Bruce
bricks
Lee
don't,
style.
and paper targets don't shoot back, and they don't move. That's something I've said many, many times. Musashi then says, after he does this, like this crazy scream and puts his lance through the wood, he says, "Are you ready now?" Back to the book. This solicitude drove Agon wild. His muscles were like steel. When he jumped, he did so with awesome lightness. His feet seemed to be on the floor and in the air at the same time, quivering like the moonlight on ocean waves. Musashi stood perfectly still, or so it seemed. There was nothing unusual about his stance. He held his sword straight out with both hands, but being slightly smaller than his opponent and not so conspicuously muscular, he looked almost casual. The greatest difference was in their eyes. Musashi's were sharp as a bird, their pupils a clear coral tinted with blood. Agon shook his head, perhaps to shake off the streams of sweat pouring down from his forehead, perhaps to shake off the old man's warning words. Had they lingered on? Was he attempting to cast him out of his mind? Whatever the reason, he was extremely agitated. He repeatedly shifted his position, trying to draw out Musashi, but Musashi remained motionless. Agon's lunge was accompanied by a piercing scream. In the split second that decided the encounter, Musashi parried and counterattacked. What happened? Agon's fellow priests hastily ran over and crowded around him in a black circle. In the general confusion, some tripped over his practice lance and went sprawling. A priest stood up, his hands and chest smeared with blood, shouting, "Medicine! Bring the medicine, quick!" "You won't need any medicine." It was the old man who had come in the front entrance and quickly assessed the situation. His face turned sour. If I'd thought medicine would save him, I wouldn't have tried to stop him in the first place. So that's it. Musashi, one shot, one kill, takes the dude out. And interestingly, here's the advice. So that guy that had taken him in is the actual master. And he says, "Is your name Miyamoto Musashi?" "That's correct." "Under whom did you study the martial arts?" "I've had no teacher in the ordinary sense. My father taught me how to use the truncheon when I was young. Since then, I've picked up a number of points from the older samurai in various provinces. I've also spent some time traveling about the countryside, learning from the mountains and the rivers. I regard them too as teachers. You seem to have the right attitude, but you're so strong, much too strong. Believing he was being praised, Musashi blushed and said, "Oh no, I'm still immature. I'm always making blunders. That is not what I mean. Your strength is your problem. You must learn to control it. Become weaker."